Hello, and thank you for joining me on this final section of nutritional immunology. In this section, we're going to look at food safety. Now, in the previous ones, we saw what types of foods that we can include in our diet for a healthy immune system. Now we're going to see how we prepare foods will in fact affect our immune system. So we can help out our immunity by choosing food safety. It's important that we have an awareness of foods and techniques that can promote bacteria growth so that we know how to avoid these. We can follow helpful guidelines in handling foods, preparing meals, and dining out that can reduce the risk of infection. And also, practicing food safety can be done at home as well as away from home. So let's begin at home. The most important thing that we can do is personal hygiene. It's very critical that we wash our hands in between our food prep steps. Also remember to wash hands after using the restroom, after touching pets, and after handling garbage. We want to wash our hands under warm running water with soap for approximately 20 seconds. It may help to sing the birthday song or maybe the ABCs. Another step that we can take in ensuring food safety in our houses is how we prepare foods. We can use separate knives for meats versus the ones that we use for fresh produce, like fruits and vegetables. Also, we can be safe when it comes to tasting our foods during the prep stage. If you do want to taste food, simply use a different type of utensil instead of the one that you're using for stirring. Also, it's important that when we are using canned foods, we wash the tops of the cans. This is because a lot of the time when we open the canned foods, that lid drops right into the food, and we don't know what could have been on it. It's also important that we clean the can opener in between our uses. So again, we're not transferring possible bacteria between the foods. Let's look at thawing and cooking our foods and food safety. It may be helpful to purchase a thermometer so that you can make sure the foods that you cook reach the right temperature to kill those bacteria. When you are cooking eggs, make sure that they're not runny. We want them to be set and firm. Also, when it comes to cooking meats, we want to cook them to where there's no pink inside. We don't want any of these meats moving. We also want to make sure that the juices run clear. That will be a good indicator the meats are done. If you want to heat up leftovers, a good goal would be 165 degrees Fahrenheit using that thermometer. Also, when you're thawing foods in the fridge, we want to keep the meats away from the raw or the prepared foods. So, it would be helpful to keep the meats in a dish so that the drippings don't move down the fridge. And also, it would be helpful to keep them at the bottom of the fridge so that really nothing is being stored underneath. Now sometimes we're in a rush and it's not always the easiest thing to thaw our meats in the fridge. So we can go ahead and microwave that meat. But we want to make sure that we rotate the dish and stir it to prevent cold spots. Also, it's important that we cook that meat right away so that it's not in what we call the danger zone, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. If you like to eat tofu, it may be helpful to boil it in half-inch cubes for about 5 minutes before you eat it. Again, that'll just decrease the risk of having bacteria growth that could cause infection. Like I mentioned earlier, when it comes to refrigerating and storing foods, we really need to consider what's called the danger zone. The danger zone is a temperature zone where bacteria grow and multiply the fastest. So we want to avoid having foods be in this danger zone at any time. We either want our foods to be hotter than 140 degrees or colder than 40 degrees. When it comes to perishable food, we need to follow the 2-hour rule. This means that when you're maybe just having conversation after dinner, if it's been more than 2 hours where those perishable foods like your meat and your dairy are out, we really should discard those because, again, those foods have maybe reached the danger zone and bacteria could be growing and multiplying. I also give a list of foods that we need to discard. We really need to discard any food that looks or smells strange, and really, we don't want to be tasting those. Also, eggs that have cracked shells need to be discarded, as well as moldy food. Now, I know sometimes when it comes to moldy food, for example, cheese, we just tend to cut off where the mold is at. But really, it's most helpful if we throw away that whole food product. Also, we need to discard freezer-burned foods, as well as any cans that have bulges or leaks or cracks in them. Now, if you do like to home can, it's important that we remember that those types of canned goods can stay about a year without having problems. However, after that year, it's very advisable that we throw away that canned food because we don't know the chemical changes that could occur. Also, we need to remember that we can rotate our food stock so that we're using the oldest food first and the newest ones later. Also, food safety can be important when it comes to keeping our work surfaces and our kitchen equipment clean. When you're cutting up foods on, say, the cutting board, it's important that we use separate ones for fresh produce like fruits and vegetables versus the ones that we use for meat, for example, cutting raw chicken. Also, I would advise against using wooden cutting boards. The reason is wooden cutting boards have little cracks and crevices that bacteria may be able to get in. So it would be best to purchase a plastic or a glass one. And we want to wash these cutting boards in between every use. And we also want to sanitize them at least weekly. It's important that we keep our appliances nice and clean too from food particles, especially that blender because it's got a lot of nooks and crannies where bacteria can hide and multiply. When it comes to cleaning those work surfaces, you can go ahead and sanitize with a bleach solution that's 1 part bleach and 10 parts water. In looking at our refrigerator and freezer, we really do need to keep them clean. We want to wipe up any spills that we see right away, look through it often so that we can discard those foods that are needed to, and it's also important that we sanitize them. When looking at the temperatures of our refrigerator and freezer, the fridge temp needs to be between 34 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The freezer temperature needs to be less than 5. Now, a huge food safety concern is cooling hot foods. We want to first of all cool them uncovered, and we want to place them in shallow containers. This is so that more surface area causes air to reach a greater amount of the food. This will help cool it quickly. The reason we don't want deep containers is we don't want hot spots where that bacteria is in the danger zone and it can grow and multiply very quickly. One creative way to help cool your foods down very quickly is putting them in an ice bath. Just fill up your sink with cold water and ice and place your dish inside. Of course, you want to make sure that none of the water spills into your dish. Then, go ahead and stir that recipe or stir that food occasionally. Also, when it comes to leftovers, if you're not going to use them within the next 2 to 3 days, then we need to freeze them. When it comes to looking through that refrigerator, if there's been leftovers that are there for more than 2 to 3 days, we need to throw them out. When it comes to cleaning around the sink, there are some food safety tips that we can follow. It's important that we would replace or wash our dishcloths and towels every day. When it comes to sponges, we want to actually replace those weekly. You can see in the picture there that those porous parts may have little areas where bacteria can creep in and grow. Now, you may decide that you just want to use paper towels in general during treatment when our immune system is most suppressed. Also bear in mind that we need to separate our chemicals from our food supplies. We do not want any chemicals contaminating the food that we eat. Also, we can take a step to air dry our dishes instead of using towels. We would maybe want to do this just because towels could cause contamination. Now we've looked at how we can be safe with the foods that we prepare inside our house, but we also can take steps when it comes to food safety outside of our homes. The major step that we can take comes with grocery shopping. Let's focus on completing grocery shopping at the end of our errands. That way, it minimizes the amount of time that food is in our car and possibly reaching a warmer temperature. Also, when it comes to grocery shopping, we want to do our shelf-stable shopping first. Those would be foods like canned foods or boxed foods that tend to be in the middle of the store. Then you can make your way to the outside aisles where the frozen and the refrigerated foods are. We want to save those foods for last, so exactly we can keep those foods at a good temperature, nice and cool. Also, it's important to check the sell-by or the use-by dates. We want to get the freshest foods possible. It also may be helpful to avoid foods from the deli. We don't know exactly how the foods are handled or prepared, and because of this, bacteria could be growing. Also, if you're purchasing any of the foods from the bakery, we want to avoid the unrefrigerated cream and custard-containing desserts and pastries. These are just more susceptible to bacteria growing. Also, it may be helpful to resist those free samples. This is because other people have used their hands when it comes to getting those free samples, and again, it could just cause some bacteria to be living in where those free samples are. Now, most people at the checkout do this, but it's important to ask that your bagging be separate for meat and fresh produce. Again, we don't want the bacteria transferring. The last area that we'll look at in this presentation is food safety outside the home when it comes to dining out. Now, we want to eat early before the crowds because that will change the amount of people who have gone through, and hopefully we won't have as much bacteria before you come. Some helpful questions to ask would be going to a fast food restaurant and asking if they can make food fresh. Also, we would want to ask them if their fruit juices are pasteurized. Pasteurization is the process of heating foods up to kill bacteria. In dining out, it also may be needed to avoid raw fruits and vegetables because these tend to have higher bacteria count. Another step that we can take is choosing single-serving condiments over the self-serve. So getting those single packages of ketchup would be a better option than getting it from a large tub that everyone uses. Also, we need to avoid salad bars because several people go through those lines, as well as delicatessens, buffets, and sidewalk vendors. Again, because we do not know the ways that they practice food safety. In general, it's wise to consider the condition of the restaurant. Are the utensils and glasses clean? A lot of times you can tell just by how they clean their restrooms if the kitchen is going to be clean. Now, food safety is very important, but we can't be perfect all the time. So I just want to encourage us to do our best when it comes to handling and preparing foods. Thank you so much for joining me for this presentation on nutritional immunology. Let's see now what our key points are to remember. First of all, we know that immune cells need nutrition to grow and function. That's why we're going to focus on plant-based foods, because they are rich in key nutrients like vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals that could help encourage and build a healthy immune system. So the foods that we want to focus on would be fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And think of getting a wide range of color as well as a great variety of these foods. And finally, we discussed how you can make a part of helping out your immune system through food safety guidelines. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you'll join us next time.